All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to plug into the story of Cikarang Listrindo. Now, this is the company that provides the absolute lifeblood, yeah, we're talking electricity, to Indonesia's most vital industrial corridor. We're going to break down how this energy giant has really evolved, from its massive operational scale all the way to its pretty recent and super important pivot toward a greener future.
So you might not have heard the name Cikarang Listrindo, but I guarantee you know their customers. We're talking about the big guys, major multinational companies. You know, the ones making the cars you drive, the phone that's probably in your pocket right now, and just countless other things that are part of our global supply chain. This company, well, it's the silent engine humming behind a huge slice of modern manufacturing. Here is how we're going to tackle this story, broken down into 5 key parts. First, we'll establish why they're an absolute industrial powerhouse. Then, we're going to look under the hood at how they've been building the engine. After that, we'll explore the rulebook for governing the grid, which is so important. Then comes the climax, the green transition. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by asking what this all means for powering the future.
Okay, let's dive right in. To really get Cikarang Listrindo, you first have to understand their unique, and I mean crucial, position inside the Indonesian economy.
The key to their whole operation, it comes down to this one special license. It's called an IUKU. Now, what that does is it basically gives them the exclusive right to sell electricity to 5 massive industrial estates just east of Jakarta. You can think of it like a dedicated energy highway for some of the most productive factories in all of Southeast Asia.
And wow, look at this customer base. It's so diverse and so important. A full third of their power goes to the auto industry. Then you've got electronics and plastics taking up another huge slice. The point is, it's not just one industry they rely on. It's this incredibly balanced portfolio of global manufacturing. And that mix, that's what gives them this rock-solid stability and makes them absolutely essential.
But you don't get a customer base like that by accident, right? You've got to build a seriously massive engine to power it all, and that brings us to the incredible scale of their infrastructure.
Just get a load of this growth. It's wild. The company kicks off in 1993 with a pretty modest 60 megawatts. By 2011, they'd expanded more than tenfold. And then, get this, just 6 years later, they almost doubled their capacity again to over 1,100 megawatts. This isn't just growth, folks. This is an explosion, all to meet a relentless demand from industry.
And how do you get all that power where it needs to go? Well, with a huge network. We're talking over 1,700 kilometers of it. To put that in perspective for you, that's like laying a power cable from Jakarta all the way to Singapore, and then all the way back. It's a truly vast web.
Now, all this scale is supported by a really smart sales structure. It's basically built on 2 pillars. First, you've got those industrial estates we talked about, where they're the only game in town. And second, they sell power to PLN, Indonesia's state utility company. And they do it with these things called take-or-pay contracts. What that means is PLN has to buy a certain amount of electricity no matter what. It's a guaranteed customer, which means a guaranteed revenue stream. Now that is a solid business model.
Okay, so we know what they do, and we know they're huge. But with a company this important, the how is just as critical as the what. You know, the real book, the oversight, the governance. Let's get into that now.
Yeah, I know. Good corporate governance, or GCG. It sounds super corporate and maybe a little boring, right? But honestly, this is the absolute bedrock of trust for any public company. It's the whole framework that makes sure the business is run openly, that people are held accountable, and that decisions are made fairly for everyone involved, from the biggest investor down to the smallest supplier.
And this right here, this is basically how you put that accountability into practice. It's all about making sure no one person or group has all the power. See how it flows? Independent auditors check the work, they report to a committee, that committee reports to the board, and the board is ultimately responsible to the shareholders. Every single layer is there to build oversight and trust.
And look, this isn't just stuff they say they do, it's real.
They make sure at least 30% of their board are independent outsiders, to get a fresh perspective. Their committees are meeting all the time to go over everything. They've got a formal whistleblowing system so people can actually speak up without fear. And they're constantly checking their work against these big regional scorecards to make sure they're up to snuff.
So you've got this powerful engine, right? And a really strong rulebook to run it. The foundation is rock solid. But the world doesn't stand still. And the biggest change hitting the energy world, it's that massive global shift away from fossil fuels. Which brings us to the most fascinating part of this whole story.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. This is where the evolution kicks into overdrive. Because just like every other major energy player on the planet, Cikarang Listrindo is figuring out how to navigate this monumental transition to renewables.
You can really see the two sides of the coin here. On one side, you have the old school, the traditional gas and coal plants that, let's be honest, built this company. But on the other side, that's the future taking shape. We're talking rooftop solar for their customers, and this really interesting process called biomass co-firing, where they mix things like palm kernel shells in with the coal.
And you can see this isn't some random accident. It's a clear, thought-out plan that's speeding up. It kicks off with a small solar project in 2018. Just a year later, they're starting on biofuels. By 2021, they've got a whole system for it. In 2022, they earn a major green rating from the government. And look at this target for 2025. Increasing co-firing to 25% is a huge jump. It's a very clear, very strategic pivot.
And is it working? Well, the proof is right here. Just look at that jump. In a single year, they boosted their renewable energy output by more than 18%. That's not just talk, that's real action. That's actual green energy getting pumped into the grid.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground, right? Operations, governance, that big green shift. So what's the big takeaway from this whole story, this incredible evolution?
I think it really comes down to this quote from one of their reports. They talk about their spirit being light that brings goodness. And you can see that's not just about flipping a switch anymore. It's about being part of a much bigger picture, about sustainable development. They're really shifting from just being a power company to being a partner in building whatever comes next.
And that really leaves us with a huge question, doesn't it? I mean, their story's a perfect little snapshot of a challenge the entire world is facing. They're showing that it's possible for a giant traditional energy company to start to pivot. But the bigger question, the one for all of us, is how are we going to power the engines of industry in, say, 2050? What's that even going to look like? It's something to think about. Thanks so much for joining us on The Explainer.